Good afternoon, welcome. One and all, I'd like to thank the Northern Ireland Government Affairs Group for inviting me to chair this today. I'd like to thank our politicians for taking time out from campaigning in this election. We are missing an alliance representative. We hope to remedy that, I think, before the afternoon's out, but we'll see. In the meantime, let me introduce our panel. On my far right is Alan McFarland of the Ulster Unionists. Next to me, John O'Dowd of Sinn Féin. On my left, Christopher Stolford of the Democratic Unionist Party. And next to him, Alban McGuinness of the SDLP. Would you welcome them, please, ladies and gentlemen? Let's get down to business. Do we have our first question?
Jonathan Traynor, representing the Northern Ireland Commissioner for Children and Young People. Given the recent UNICEF report which ranked the UK, and particularly Northern Ireland, so low in terms of children's current experiences, will the panel give a commitment on behalf of their parties to implement the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child as part of the forthcoming Bill of Rights, and certainly implement it in law in Northern Ireland if elected?
Christopher Stolford.
I think that the UNICEF report was an indictment of the experiences that children have in Northern Ireland. We supported the establishment of the Children's Commissioner because we believe that it's important that children should have an advocate free from political process, as it were, independent from politicians. We would support increasing the rights of children, right to be educated in a way that their parents see fit, for example, is one of the rights that we are in favour of. We're in favour of protecting children from exploitation, and we certainly have spoken at length on that. In terms of incorporating the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child into legislation, I would have to be honest with you and tell you that I haven't read the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, so it would be inappropriate for me to say yea or nay to that question. But certainly we as a party take very seriously the whole issue of protecting our children and the most vulnerable in society. We support the work that the Commissioner is engaged in, and we will do all that we can if Storming's up and running to ensure that across all the departments policies are proofed to ensure that they don't have negative impact upon children and young people.
Okay, John O'Dowd.
Well, firstly, I want to be in a position where we have an executive and a government to form and make policy instead of sitting on panels like this here making commitments to groups like yourselves and other groups and other rooms around the country. So I think the most important thing is that we get an executive form where you are then talking to politicians who are holding the reins of power, who can make changes in children's lives and young people's lives and older people's lives as well. In terms of the UNICEF policy, yes, I believe it is a commitment of our party to bring UNICEF children's rights into legislation. We also supported the Children's Commissioner and have supported the ongoing work of that department. I think in terms of the report and where it showed children standing in Great Britain, and certainly the report in relation to the Republic wasn't very shining either, is sad in the fact that if young people do feel abandoned and don't feel part of society or don't feel part of the wider family, then we are heading towards further crises in our future. So we are. So I think there is a need for politicians to listen to your office, to the other child welfare groups out there, and start making changes in their lives.
In 2005, in your Westminster Manifesto, you said Sinn Féin reaffirms its support for the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, with its clear demand that the child should be fully prepared to live an individual life in society and brought up in the spirit of the ideals proclaimed in the Charter of the United Nations, and in particular in the spirit of peace, dignity, tolerance, freedom, equality and solidarity.
Thank you.
So the question is, what has Sinn Féin done about it since 2005?
Well, Sinn Féin has continually worked for and negotiated our way towards the establishment of an executive, because none of the parties around this table can do anything about it. Because all we will ever remain will be opposition parties until we have an executive and we form government. And I think that's the most important step forward for this society at this stage in our collective history. Because our manifesto hasn't been published yet, it'll be coming out next week, and some of the other parties have published manifestos. None of that will be implemented unless we take the reins of power.
Will that commitment be in the manifesto for this?
I have no doubt it will be, yes.
Okay. Alban McGuinness.
I think there are 2 points to make. First thing is, I think we should look at the Bill of Rights for Northern Ireland and see where we can incorporate elements from the UNICEF Charter for Children into that. I think that might be a mechanism whereby we can actually implement locally those particular rights. I think also that if one considers the report, I think the most shocking element of it was the high levels of deprivation and poverty that affect children. And I think if we are serious about protecting our children, then we've got to protect them from poverty, because that is one of the most serious problems. No matter how shiny white and brilliant your legislation is, and any charter or any Bill of Rights that we might have, if you're not providing children with a proper standard of living, then effectively you're undermining their rights.
But would you incorporate the UN Convention, or would you commit to the incorporation of the UN Convention?
I think we should consider elements of it. I'm not so certain that you can incorporate every aspect of it.
Right.
But I think certainly let's consider those elements that we deem appropriate to our local circumstance.
Alan McFarlane.
Yeah, I think it's worth reminding ourselves about the Bill of Rights for Northern Ireland, because the Belfast Agreement was quite specific on it, and that these were rights which were specific to Northern Ireland. That's what it's supposed to be. So the question is, what rights are there that are specific to Northern Ireland that need to go into a Northern Ireland bill? This is an issue that should be dealt with, in my view, on a UK-wide basis. There are a number of issues. Child poverty, Alban has just highlighted, and we need to progress on that. We have a Children's Commissioner. I worry greatly, and I know a number of you in the audience have led the charge on this issue of socioeconomic rights. So I'm on dangerous ground here with you. But the purpose of government is to listen to people's problems and to introduce laws that solve those problems. Firing everything into a Bill of Rights, where the chances are, if it's difficult at all, it will end up in the courts, and the lawyers spend their time scrapping about this. Now, the logic here is we get our government up and running, and then you and each of the disciplines, and the same with children, go to the minister involved and say, listen, we have a problem over this here. Can you introduce legislation in the Assembly to sort this out? I think if we fire everything, including the kitchen sink, into a Bill of Rights, we will spend more time dodging in and out of courts with legal arguments over A, B, C and D that could be much more easily solved by poking a minister in the chest, he or she metaphorically, and saying, sort this out for me.
Right, do you want to come back on that, having heard their view?
Article 12 of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child says, and which both the UK and Republic of Ireland governments are signatories to, gives a commitment to that children and young people will have a right to have a say in decisions that affect their lives. Just would like all the parties, obviously, if elected, to give a commitment that in the review of public administration, they will make sure that children and young people have a right to the say in the decisions that affect their lives and the services that are delivered to them.
Point taken, thank you. And let's move on.